Good morning, class. Once again, we are back with our civics chapter number 5, judiciary. I have already explained you that what is judiciary and why it is important. I have also explained you what are the different types of judiciary we have. That judiciary is an important independent organ of our government. I have also explained you why it is an independent one. Okay, so let's begin with today's topic. That what is the structure of courts in India. Now, I have told you that in judiciary we have courts as the mechanism to work. Now there are also different types of courts we have. We know Supreme Court, we know High Court. Yes, but not only two, we have many courts in India. There are different levels of it. Now let's see what are the different structures of courts in India. There are three different levels of courts in our country. There are several courts at the lower level, while there is only one at the apex level. Okay, so we have three levels. Out of that, in the lower level we have many courts, but in the upper level, that is the only one court we have, that is the apex court, that is Supreme Court. Okay. The courts that the most people interact with are called as subordinate or district courts. Normally we people go to those courts are actually subordinate or district courts. These are usually at the district or tehsil level or in the towns, and they hear many kinds of cases. Each state is divided into districts that are presided over by a district judge. So in the district court we have the district judge. They are normally in the tehsil level or in the town level. Each state has a high court, which is the highest court of the state. So every state. So how many of states we have? We have got 29 states currently. Yes, but there are, and each state we have one of the high courts. So at the top we have only one court, that is Supreme Court, which is located in New Delhi. So where is the Supreme Court? Please underline it. It is located at New Delhi, and it is presided over by the Chief Justice of India. So the head of the Supreme Court is known as the Chief Justice of India. The decisions made by the Supreme Court are binding on all courts of India. Please underline that. Chief Justice of India, and the decision taken by the Supreme Court has to be followed by all the courts from the all the courts in the country. Okay. Now the structure of the courts from lower to the highest level is such that resembles a pyramid. So having read the description, we have to write the types of courts we have. Okay. So above, in the first above. So let's move from down to up. So down we have lower courts, then we have subordinate courts, and the last we have apex court, that is Supreme Court. So first we have lower courts, subordinate courts. Second, middle one you write subordinate courts, High Court, and above you write Supreme Court. Okay, fill this triangle, fill this pyramid, and then moving to the next. Yes. Are these different levels of courts connected to each other? Yes, they are actually interconnected to each other. In India, we have an integrated judicial system, meaning that the decisions made by higher courts are binding on the lower courts. So, any lower court decision can be taken to higher courts, but any higher court decisions cannot be taken to lower courts. Okay. Another way to understand this integration is through the appellate systems that exist in India. Now, what is this appellate system? Let's see. This means that a person can appeal to a higher court if they believe that the judgment passed by the lower court is not just. So, if anybody feels that the lower court has not given them justice, they can obviously move to the higher court for justice. So, this is known as appellate system. So, let's understand what do we mean by the appellate system by tracking a case. We have an example of state Delhi administration versus Lakshman Kumar, and others in 1985 from the lower courts to the Supreme Court. So, from the lower court till the Supreme Court, this entire case went. So let's see what is the case actually. In February 1980, Lakshman Kumar married a 20-year-old Sudha Goyal, and they lived in a flat in Delhi with Lakshman's brother and his families. Okay. On 2nd December 1980, Sudha died in a hospital due to burns. Her family filed a case in the court. When this case was heard in the trial court, 4 of their neighbors were called as witness. They stated that on the night of December 4th, they heard Sudha scream and had forced their way into Lakshman's flat. They saw Sudha standing with her sari in flames. They extinguished the fire by wrapping Sudha in a gunny bag and a blanket. Sudha told them that her mother-in-law Shakuntala had poured kerosene oil on her, and her husband Lakshman had lit the fire. During this trial, members of Sudha's family and a neighbor stated that Sudha had been subjected to torture by her in-laws, and they were demanding more cash, a scooter, and a fridge on the birth of the first child. As a part of the defense, Lakshman and his mother stated that Sudha's sari had accidentally caught fire while she was heating milk. On the basis of this other evidences, trial court convicted Lakshman, his mother Shakuntala, and his brother-in-law Subhash Chandra, and sentenced all 3 of them to death. So that is the justice given by the lower court. But they were not agreed to it, so they moved to the higher court. Now let's see what happens. In November 1983, the three accused went to the High Court to appeal against the verdict of the trial court. The High Court, after hearing the arguments of all the lawyers, decided that Sudha had died due to an accidental fire caused by the kerosene stove. So the higher court said that Sudha died because of the accident by the kerosene stove, and Lakshman, Shakuntala and Subhash Chandra were acquitted. So now they were left. So now you may remember that the photo essay on the women's movement in your class 7th, you read about how in the 1980s women's groups across the country spoke out against dowry deaths. So this was dowry. Dowry is Dahej. Okay, so they protested against the failure of the courts to bring this case to justice. The above High Court judgment deeply troubled women, and they held demonstrations and filed a separate appeal against the High Court decision in the Supreme Court through the Indian Federation of Women Lawyers. So again, now after the High Court given the law, so they were not satisfied. So women all over the country had petitioned against it in the Federation of Women's Lawyers Court. So in 1985, the Supreme Court heard this appeal against the acquittal of Lakshman and two members of his family. The Supreme Court heard the arguments of the lawyers and reached a decision that was different from that of the High Court. They found Lakshman and his mother guilty, but acquitted the brother-in-law Subhash because they did not have enough evidence against him. So now here only the mother-in-law and husband is found guilty, the brother-in-law is not. So the Supreme Court decided to send the accused to the prison of life. So now they were imprisoned as lifetime imprisonment. Okay, so what are the different branches of the legal system we have? Two different branches we have, criminal law and civil law. So the above case of the dowry death falls under the criminal law. Okay, the crime against society and is a violation of criminal law. So in addition to the criminal law, the legal system also deals with civil new laws. You read in chapter 4 of how a new civil law was passed in 2006 to protect women against domestic violence. So let's see what it is. Civil law and criminal law, we have the difference between. In your exam, mark it as an important one. This is an important one because in your exam you might get a distinguish between, write the difference between civil law and criminal law. To entire this distinguish between, you need to write in the exam, as well as for now you need to write this distinguish between in your notebook without fail. Do write it, criminal law and civil law. Write it in your notebook. Copy this entire table and write it. Okay, so what is criminal law? It deals with conducts or acts the law defines as offenses. For example, theft, harassing a woman to bring more dowry, murder. Civil law deals with any harm or injury to rights of individuals. For example, disputes relating to sale of land, purchase of goods, rent matters, divorce cases. So now what is criminal law? It usually begins with the lodging of an FIR, that is first information report, with the police who investigate the crime after such a case filed in the court. Civil law, a petition has to be filed before the relevant court by the affected part only. In a rent manner, either the landlord or the tenant can file a case. Criminal law, it is found guilty, the accused can be sent to jail and also fined. Civil law, the court gives a specific relief acts. For instance, in case between a landlord and a tenant, the court can order the flat to be vacated and pending rent to be paid. So this type of civil law and criminal law is there. Now fill in the table what you have understood about the criminal law and so description of the violation, branch of law, procedure to be followed. A group of girls are persistently harassed by a group of boys while walking to school. So which type of law? It's a criminal law. First we need to file the FIR. Please write the answers. I'm telling you the answers. Write it down with a pencil in the textbook itself. So first one, branch of law is criminal law and the procedure is file an FIR. Next, a tenant who is being forced to move out of file a case of court against the landlord. This is civil law. Civil law and the procedure is you have to, what is the procedure? You need to file a petition against the landlord. Okay, written the answer, yes. Now next topic we have, does everyone has access to courts? Yes, everybody can access to the court irrespective of whether they're rich, poor, male, female, or anything. Everybody has got the right to go and access to the court. So now see, in principle, all citizens of India can access the courts in this country. This implies that every citizen has a right to justice through the courts. As you read earlier, the courts play a very significant role in protecting our fundamental rights. If any citizen believes that their rights are being violated, then they can approach the court for justice to be done. While the courts are available for all, in reality access to courts has always been difficult for a vast majority of the poor in land. Legal procedures involve a lot of money and paperwork as well as take up a lot of time. Yes, so all these legal proceedings are very costly and are also very time consuming. So for a poor person who cannot read and whose family depend on a daily wage, the idea of going to court to get justice often seems very remote. So it's very difficult for a poor person to go to court. But then in response to this, the Supreme Court in the early 1980s has devised a mechanism to the public interest litigation, or PIL. So for the poor people, it has been made as PIL, public interest litigation, to increase access to the justice. It allowed any individual. What is PIL? See, it actually allows any individual or organization to file a PIL in the High Court or the Supreme Court on behalf of those whose rights are being violated. So the legal process was greatly simplified. Even a letter or telegram addressed to the Supreme Court or a High Court could be treated as PIL. So even if you write a letter, also it will be considered as PIL. In the early years, PIL was used to secure justice on a large number of issues, such as securing bonded laborers for inhuman work conditions and securing the release of prisoners in Bihar who had been kept in jail even after the punishment term was complete. So now, did you know that the midday meal that children now receive in government and government aided schools because of the PIL? You can see the photographs besides. Okay. So for common person, access to court is very access to justice. The courts exercise a very crucial role in interpreting the fundamental rights of citizens, and as you saw in the above case, the courts interpreted Article 21 of the Constitution, or the right of life, including the right to food. So they therefore ordered the state to keep certain steps to provide food for all, including the midday meal scheme. So however, there are also court judgments that people believe to work against the best interest of the common people. For example, activists who work on issues concerning the right to shelter and housing for the poor people believe that the recent judgments on evictions are far cry from the earlier judgments. When recent judgments they have given that tend to view the slum dweller as an encroacher in the city. Earlier judgments like 1995 Olga Teles vs Bombay Municipal Corporation tried to protect the livelihoods of slum dwellers. So one such case, it is that you have the right to live any part of the country, so now you have become a slum dweller. And other side, it is telling that they are encroaching on the public property. So this the two types of laws we have. There is a small story here about this case. The judgment of the Olga Teles versus Mumbai Municipal Corporation established the right to livelihood as a part of the right to life. The following experts from the judgment point the ways in the judge link the issues of the right to life from that of livelihood. Let's see. The sweep of the right to life conferred by Article 21 is wide and far-reaching. Life means something more than that mere animal existence. It does not merely that life cannot be extinguished or taken away as, for example, by the imposition and execution of the death sentence except according to procedure established by law. That is but one aspect, the right to life. An equally important facet of that right is the right to livelihood, because no person can live without the means of living, that is the means of livelihood. That the eviction of a person from a pavement or slum will inevitably lead to the deprivation of his means of livelihood is a proposition which does not have to be established in each individual case. In the present case, the facts constituting empirical evidence justify the conclusion that the petitioners live in slums and on pavements because they have small jobs to nurse in the city, and for them there is nowhere else to live. So they choose a pavement or a slum in the vicinity of the place of the work and choose the slum is to lose the job. The conclusion therefore is that the eviction of the petitioner will lead to deprivation of the livelihood and subsequently deprivation of life. So this entire story means what? That they are slum dwellers, they stay in the roadside and they work. So if they have to vacate the place and move to somewhere else, that means they will lose the job. That means they will lose the livelihood. That means one side they have to leave the pavement and one side they have to lose the job, which is not possible. So this is a very complicated case which was being solved. Okay. So the another issue that affects the common person's access to justice is the inordinately long number of years that courts take to hear a case. The phrase justice delayed is justice denied is often used to characterize this extended time period that the court takes. Yes, it is very normally said that justice delayed is justice denied because it takes an n number of years to get justice. The number of, now let's see this small table. I want you to draw this table in your notebook. Number of judges in India. Supreme Court we have 34, the sanctioned strength, and the working strength is 34. We have no vacancies in the Supreme Court. High Courts we have 1179 sanctioned, but we have 655 people working and 424 vacant places. District and subordinate courts we have 22,644 strength but we have 17,509 is working, and we have 5,135 vacant places. However, in spite of this, there is no denying that the justice has played a crucial role in democratic India, serving as a check on the powers of the executive and legislature as well in the protecting of the fundamental rights of citizens. The members of the Constituent Assembly had quite correctly envisioned a system of ours with an independent judiciary is a key feature in our democracy. Irrespective of so much of time consuming, so much of hassle work, paperwork, still justice has always been given. Yes. So that ends our chapter here. I hope you have understood the chapter well. Now moving to this first question and second question was already given as your homework. Now you have third question. You need to write the third one. Fourth one is true or false. And fifth one. Third, fourth and fifth you need to write in your notebook. Yes. I will be giving the answers very shortly. Till then you just have to start writing. Thank you, class.